Hello, today I will be discussing and showing you step by step how to replace the drive roller and its two bearings on the Makita model 9401 belt sander. My name is Dick Babbitt and I thank you for dialing me into your realm of viewing. I am confident I can offer assistance in repairing your Makita model 9401 belt sander. Excuse me. The Makita 9401 belt sander has been a very popular belt sander, and I can see why. It's very durable and powerful. I suspect several million were sold, and parts are still readily available. That's very unusual. Cars, you can only run them for about 10 years and you can't get a part. This brings me to your first need, which is a parts breakdown diagram, which you see on the screen right here on the front page. It has the associated figure numbers inside and its relative part numbers. These are available from Makita USA, that's all one word, the M is capitalized, makitausa.com or ereplacementparts.com. It's all small caps and the letter E is on the front, and that is like echo. You should have one of these in your hand before starting. It gives you a beautiful breakdown of all the componentry. And if ever you get a little lost in the repair, which I don't think you will, I hope the video describes it all very well. This is the first part we're going to remove, and it is part number 1, by the way. And it is the blower, the dust cover for the blower. So we'll be taking that off. And we'll also be taking off these parts right here, the base cover, which holds the steering mechanism, the tension on the belt, and the mechanism to steer the belt on the pulley. So we're going to start with that. And before I do, I'm going to open this up and show you what it looks like. There's 3 pages, 2 on parts and numbers, but the diagram is worth its weight in gold, and they hand these out. You can get them online. The left-hand column is figures. That's the figure number, which is inside of right here. That tells you what it is, like the brushes of figure 21. And it's the second part is the part ID number. This is the part you're going to need. These are the numbers you're going to need to order the part and the name of the part. So that breaks it down very well, I thought. With that said, and before I start, I'm going to recommend you blow out your dust collector very thoroughly with a high pressure hose, clean it up, and so you're not making dust, because we're going to have a gear train opened, and dust isn't very good to gears, if you know what I mean with grease. We'll also be using a couple of tools that woodworkers normally don't have, and I'm going to lay this here. Hopefully you can read it on the screen. This is this tool. We're going to run into a circlip, and we've got to take it off. And this tool is available from this company, part number 46,000. It's $12. I mean, it's worthy of having. It comes with a box of various tips that you may want to use some other time in your life if you're repairing a car or something like that. A lot of companies have gone to that method of holding a bearing in the cavity. Anyway, let's start now on this side right here by taking, and first of all, I'm going to show you what we're doing so that you'll know. I got to remove this. I got to take this off because we cannot get in there to hold this roller from turning. And we've got to take this disc off, this pulley off. I'll take this cover off real quick and I'll show you what we're talking about. It's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to show it. Picture's worth 1,000 words. We're going to be putting in these 2 holes 2 15/64 drill bit shanks. When I take this over to the vise and clamp it in there, that's what I'm going to be doing. Now, I did this wrote this on here so that you could see. To get this, normally turns in this direction clockwise as you're looking down on it. To get this off, you got to spin it the opposite way. It's locked on there, I can tell you right now, from all the torque that it's received over the years. I've had this unit, I think, for probably 18 years. And we're going to be using a breaker bar in between here. We could be using another tool on the outside here, on this side, but we first have to get to this. And there are two tools, only one of them I'll recommend. There's this tool for holding this. I wouldn't recommend that because you're doing two things with one hand. You're trying to squeeze this on this aluminum here, and you're trying to overcome the torque of this torque bar. You're not going to do it very well. A better tool to do that with, and this is the only thing I'd recommend, is a pipe wrench. Put that on there, and I'll show you how we're going to do that when we get to that stage, which will be rather quickly. Let's remove this cover right now, and we'll go from there, because that's going to give us a grip on that pulley. I should say a grip on that roller right there. Keep all your parts associated with the part you're going to remove. This dust cover is with this. And if ever you take this off and this falls off, and it can do that when you flip it over, it's easier to put back in. You just put it with this flat part right up here facing outbound. Okay, we set that over there. Now we flip it over. We don't need to remove this tensioner here. We're going to have enough room now to get this wrench on here and exert opposing pressure to the torque bar that we're going to be using. Now, I'm going to move this over here and reset the camera a little bit because I got to clamp this down to do this. We're going to remove this belt. And this turns this way normally, and we're going to turn it that way to get it off. I'll show you a little trick. And everybody has one of these tools, so if you hang in there with me, and we'll show you how this happens. By the way, I'm a photographer and the repairman, all in one. My wife calls me the wizard of all chores. That's what she gives me, all the chores. And wonderful cooking. Anyway, here we go. We're clamping this down because we're going to put a lot of pressure on that, upward pressure, on this belt here. This is a poly rib belt. And when you get it off, inspect it for cracks. If there are any cracks, order a new one. Also, you have two brushes are in here, the screw heads, big plastic screw heads. Pull them out and inspect them one at a time and put them back in the same orientation. Otherwise, you're going to have sparks on your armature and you don't need that. In other words, it's got to go through break-in again. Just if they're good, put them back in. Don't twist them around or anything else. It won't do you any good. Now, we're going to spin this in the direction that it normally rotates, which is clockwise, as I mentioned. We're going to put up, and we're pushing a lot of pressure up on this. There you go. So that's how you do it, and I'm sure you all have this tool, piece of string. We won't be using that to assemble it though, and assemble it's a little harder than taking it off. We'll go through that. Now we're going to take this unit off of this table. I'm going to put the two drill bit shanks into these holes, and we're going to proceed to undo the pulley here, remove it, and we're going to remove this gear cover. And I'll show you why. We're going to replace two bearings. One bearing resides on the top case itself. The other bearing resides in the aluminum housing inside. And I'll point that out. It'll be easy to see in a moment. So here we go. I'm going to move this back up here a little bit. And I'm going to get here and adjust this a little so that you can get a good view of what's going on. So first thing we're going to do is make sure everything is set to go, and we are. So we're ready now to clamp it up which means I gotta reset this again, and I don't mind doing that. Get this out of the way. I'm gonna come over to this vise here with the unit. So you're gonna see me, and it's a wood vise, by the way. And the two surfaces I'm gonna be clamping in the vise, I'll point these out right now. This surface right here with the blue tape, this is gonna be the limiting area we can go in on the vise, and we're only gonna go up to this knob. Likewise on this side is the foot. And this is a big casting inside, there's big aluminum ribs inside here. So I'm not worried about hurting anything on the dust collector body itself. And you want to clamp this real tight because this takes some force, and I don't mind telling you that. This is the hardest part of the entire job. We put the two screws in, and I hope you can see that. Let me take a peek. Yes, you can. Okay. Put those in, and before you get your breaker bar over there, we're gonna turn this the opposite way of rotation, which means that bar, we're gonna go this way, opposite rotation. So that bar, this drum here, this rear roller wants to spin this way. So we want to put this wrench on here so that we have got a hold of this and can counter the force of this big long bar is going to have on it. There. That wasn't too bad. We shouldn't need the drills again. I'll bring this back over here so that it'll readjust the camera here momentarily. That gives you a pretty good view. So we just spin this off, put this aside, keep all your parts in nice order. If they're in chronological order, chances of making an error are pretty much nullified. It's amazing how powerful this little drill bit is, drill driver. You're probably wondering where I got the knowledge to do this. I'll tell you where I got the knowledge, right here. This is what gave me the knowledge to do this. Yes, some of the methods are novel. I invented those, and that's the way it is. Some people can do things that I can't do. There, we set that down nice and chronologically. Now we're going to line up another row right here, if you can see that. Hopefully you can. I laid these all down right there, and our gear cover is going to go up here where it says gear cover. I'm not going to take the camera all the way over there. Yeah, that gives us a pretty good view of what we're doing here. Now, this is where this tool is going to come in handy. On the top part of this is a circlip. A circlip is a retaining ring that is spring-loaded inward. There's a teeny shaft cut into that axle right there. That's the rear roller axle shaft right there. So that's what's holding that in there so it won't slide out. And underneath that roller, or underneath the circlip I should say, just barely squeeze enough to get it out. So we're going to set that down right here. I hope it's in view. If not, I'll move the camera. And under that is an anti-friction shim, so that you won't be spinning this circlip in a circle. Now, right here is a Woodruff key. That is a little bit tricky to take out, and I'll show you. So what we do is we just push the roller out this way and take it out. Now, I want to point out something on this roller. Number one, there's usually a washer inside here. It didn't come out with it. So that washer is residing right here right now. What it is, it's a grease catching washer. This bronze in here is lubricated by that unit. Now, I mentioned the roller is flat, I think earlier, and there's where it is. It's flat, very flat. The new one going in with its new friction surface is crowned. See that? It's crowned. In the same way on a bandsaw. I have a bandsaw here in my shop, and if the roller, if the bearing or the wheel that turns it isn't crowned, you have a hard time keeping your bandsaw centered on it. So we'll set the old parts away off so we're not going to get confused with them. And we're going to lift this bearing, this unit out of here. And then we're going to take the Woodruff key out of here so that we can have it and put it back in ourselves. You don't want to be trying to do that two things at once, sliding that in with that there. So now, with that said, you can see the needle bearing right here. It's right in this hole here. That's the old one. We're going to take that out, but we're going to take it out from the other side. Before I set this gear down, I want to point something out. This is the way it came out. Notice on the other side, it's got a raised surface. That raised surface rubs on that bronze bushing. Be sure to get it in the same way you took it out. If you have any doubts, go to your checklist. That is your sheet right here. And it will show you how that goes in here. And it's pictured here. Believe it or not, it is pictured here, and I'll point to it and show you. It is pictured right here, and you can see the raised lip going into the body. So that's how useful that little sheet can be in case you get waylaid somehow. Now I'm flipping this over, and hopefully you can see this. This is the needle bearing, the back side of it. We're going to punch that out of there, and we can punch it out there with anything. I got a brass drift here, will do it. If you don't have a brass drift, a 1/4-inch socket will do just nicely. You're going to throw it away anyway, so why not? And Makita recommends replacing both this needle bearing and the other bearing that's in that housing, the gear cover, which will be taken off next. So if you got this apart, for God's sakes, use your energy and put the new ones in. There's the old needle bearing. I'm going to throw that right inside the old sanding drum. And we're going to take a new one, and we're going to put a new one in its place. Now, I got a brass drift. There's numerous ways to pound this in, but this is just a brass drift. I've had some of these tools for years. I used to play around with cars, and I got the leftovers. Anyway, that goes where on home plate there. Now we can start assembling this unit right here, but before we do, I want to get the gear cover and get that bearing out of there so that we don't have to do any other outside work of the unit itself. Now there's two ways to remove this gear cover. It's pressed in, but I want to point something out so that you're very careful in treating this when you go banging on it. These are the ribs right here. This is aluminum. Aluminum is a rather soft metal. And you want to have support on this ring right here, which is a lip. And every one of these webs, if you can, as close to this circle as possible. Two ways to do it. Drill a 1 3/8 inch hole with a forceps bit and a piece of wood, and lay your product down like that and knock the bearing out. The other way, if you don't have an 1 3/8 unit, forceps bit, here's another little trick you can do. I'm loaded with these things, by the way. You just do that and take it together, and don't worry about gaps. It's done that way purposely so that we know we're crushing it that way and we're crushing that circle that way, and now that bearing should come out of there. So I'm going to bang down on it with this drift. And that's it. So simple as that. Now to put the other one in, the new one in, we turn the product over. I'm going to put this inside the drum of the old sanding drum. This is a 7/8 socket wrench, and it happens to be just the right. You don't want to bang on the center of this. This is a lifetime roller bearing, and it's lubricated for life. But you do want to put your punch into the outside ring, and this socket wrench will do it nicely. There you go. Now we're done with that. I don't think we need a hammer anymore. I don't think we need that. That, when it's in there, is more or less flush with the surface on this side. On this side, don't get nervous. You're going to see a gap here. That is a tapered inlet there, with a very slight taper. So we're okay right there. It looks good to me. And if you want to check, you can always tap the outside. There you go. So let's move this stuff aside, and we'll commence with putting it back together. We're set to rock and roll. So let's see here. Let's get our unit up here. I want to make sure the camera is adjusted to get that. Yeah, that looks good. So the first thing we're going to do is put in the rear drive wheel for the belt sander. This is what powers the belt sander. I should say, what contacts the belt sander. And the washer, by the way, is already on here. If you notice, it's stuck on the casting this time. See it right there? Okay, now we're going to put that gear on. Remember, the hump side goes down. And I'm going to try and turn this roller a little bit before we get to that so you can see the Woodruff key going in. It's a little tricky, I don't mind telling you. It's nothing nobody can do. By the way, this is a rather easy job. Just take your time. Stay well managed, clean surface. Very important to be clean. Line up that with the Woodruff hole, with the Woodruff slot in the shaft. Take your little square Woodruff key, and I'm going to try and slip that in there. And I may have to wiggle the gear a little bit to get her in there. There we go. Push that down. Now, to make sure we get, a nice surface there that's going to slide on that friction washer, put a little, this is just a Q-tip with a little bit of grease on it. We smear it around there. This is your friction washer that's going to go over there. Hold on. I may have two washers in there. I do. One in here, one in here. So you got to be careful of that. When I took the old shaft out, the old roller out, the washer stayed in there. So it can stick in either one. Here we go. Take that out. That wouldn't allow this to assemble well because that washer takes up enough space that the hole would not line up. So I got to take this out and take out that gear. I got to get that Woodruff key back out of there because you don't want to try and put that in there. That falls down in there, you might have a problem. Get that back in there. Yeah, that's better. I can see room now to put the other part in. Try and line that up as best you can, and then just be ready to wiggle a hair. There it goes, right in. I love it when things go together very smoothly. Friction washer goes on, and that holds the Woodruff key in also. And the little snap ring now goes on, and I want to show you the best way to pick that up. Best way to pick it up is to pick it up and put it down on a piece of hardwood like this, or softwood I should say. This is just an old scrap of plywood that I have around here. And I'm trying to show you how we're going to pick that up. We're going to put one side into a hole, then we're going to squeeze until we get the other lined up on it, and we're going to press down into the wood and pick it up. Now I got just very little spreading power on the handle here. When I get it over this unit here, I'm going to open it up some more. Whoops, I didn't hold that wheel up. Take it over the shaft and just squeeze a little more, and there you go. Now, you want to know what's in there? You can take this and spin it around, see it? And that tells me it's in home plate, and that's going to hold that in for its lifetime. Now, we want to put in our drive wheel. This is the drive wheel, helical gears, a little bit of grease on the gears. It doesn't take much. This is the part that's spinning quite fast, quite frankly. It's slowed down a little bit between the gear ratio of this and the pulley, and then it's slowed down 4:1 on this, approximately 4:1 on this gear ratio right here. So you got a very, very powerful sander with that gear ratio like that. Now we're going to put on a plate. Everything's in there that should be there. It's all together properly. Perfect. Now we're going to take the screws that we have sitting here. And be careful starting screws. Do not start them with your driver, because aluminum is a soft metal, as I mentioned earlier. And if it jumps a thread, you're gonna have a problem. You're gonna have to go to another procedure that I don't even want to mention. It's not too much fun. Yeah, we got them started. Now we can drive them to home. There, we got that on. Now, next thing is the pulley. Remember, this screws on the opposite way we took it off. There you go. Now, it doesn't have to be on there real tight, because the reason being is it's going to tighten up as soon as you put a belt on there and hit wood. It's going to automatically tighten. It's so much so that you'll need a breaker bar to get it off of there. Now we're going to put on the belt. I'm going to bring this over again and clamp it, and hopefully we'll get a view of it for you. I'm just going to clamp it to the edge of the table, not in the vise. I'm trying to hold it steady while I put the belt on. There. Now, putting it on, as I said, is a little harder, a little more difficult than it was to take it off. Check your belt again, make sure there's no cracks in it. Looks good to me. We're going to put it over the drive wheel. That's the one that's attached to the armature of the motor. We're going to put it over there. We're going to pick about, with these grooves here, we're going to leave about 2 grooves exposed, or 1 groove if we can. We're going to take it over the other drive wheel about the same, and we're going to try and rotate it while I'm holding down on the belt on the infeed side up here. You don't want to get your fingers pinched in there. You could also put these two drill bits in there and put a piece of wood between them and use that as a lever. But they're a little long to be doing that. You could get some shorter ones and do that. And you'll have a driver. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this belt entirely onto the drive pulley. And I'm going to do that by pushing down on this belt, the infeed, and turn it in the direction of rotation. There we go. Now, this one is still one groove short of being at home plate. So let's take this one, push this down into the drive side, take it around, one full revolution. Your belt is now on. So that's the way that's done on this table anyway. I'm sure the factory has a method that's probably a lot superior, but they didn't tell me that. Now we'll put on a belt cover here. I'll just take that home with a screwdriver. The 7.2 on here, by the way, is the part number of this cover. I did a few things like that when I was studying this, and I said, hey, well, what do I need it for? This, by the way, was part number 6. And this, sometimes this will come out of here. If it does, when you're doing this, just take it and put it back in the groove and twist it a little bit clockwise, and it will self-lock in there. Now remember, I always said start them 2 or 3 threads before you put the driver on them, because it's important. These are fine thread screws, by the way. They're not quarter 20s. They're something else, but I think they're metric. Now, you're all together, and I put tape on this here. I didn't want to scratch. I was running it on the floor before a little bit. I also may have mentioned this slider in here. This is to prevent your belt from chewing up the casting in here, the aluminum. And it comes with 2 pieces of Teflon that go completely across. This one had the front one gone and the other one cut in half. But more importantly, it had chewed away and it was starting to go into the aluminum. So I put a new one on. You can order this at the same time. It's cheap, and you can probably see it down in there. It's that shiny piece of metal. I put that on the other day, and I'm glad I caught it in time. I also put this plating on a few weeks ago. My cork underneath it was pretty chewed up, and this was getting ragged. I put a new one on. Now it's got support. A big chunk of cork was missing, and now it's got great support. So we're done with this, but let me plug it in and make sure we've done everything properly. And by the way, before you start working on your machine, make sure you unplug it. This is a powerful machine. That concludes our fix for the Makita 9401, and I want to thank you for being patient, and I hope I've been of assistance. You have a great day and enjoy working on your machine. Take care.